All right, so we got another article, another proposed tax increase from Los Angeles, and it's pretty incredible. I used to live in LA and recently moved to Ohio as far as a year ago, and the thing is, how can you mess up? Like Los Angeles, California has the best weather on earth, right? And you had Silicon Valley, you had so many things going for you. And it seems like that they are trying anything as hard as possible to mess it up and turn it into a third world country. Now this is a tax proposed on property sales over 5 million. So where somebody would be like, well, at first blush, would be like, well, how many, do you have properties that you're selling that are over 4 million? Then if not, don't worry about it. The rich millionaires and the billionaires are going to pay for that. But already, like, first of all, what you got to understand is, so many things messed up with this. One, with it's 5 million now, but they could either drop it, or with the inflation, the government's printing so much money, 5 million could just be in 5-10 years. That could be an average house in Los Angeles. So everybody's going to be subject to this tax. And two, just look at all the taxes people pay already. If you go on Redfin or Zillow, click on the property. Let's say it like a $450,000 house. That's not a luxury house. That's like the cheapest thing, almost the cheapest thing you can get. If you try to sell it or buy it, that's already $50,000 where you're losing. You're losing an exchange fees from paying realtors to paying other closing costs and stuff like that. $50K to sell a property. That's not to mention if you actually make any kind of money. That's already capital gains. So any kind of prosperity, any kind of gain is being whittled away by government, and it's there. But if they keep doing it, it's going to create a more and more stark contrast between a possible different states that are more business friendly and actually want people to come, want business, want to use the tax funds really efficiently, so you get a lot of bang for your tax dollars. And another thing that's messed up about it is this is just feeding the LA, California has a homeless industrial complex where it's just a big grift, a giant scam. So many people are making tons of cash from this, and you'll never have strings attached. It'll never say, whoa, let's say we have 60,000 people in the LA area. Well, with this tax increase, and these are the plans we're going to do, we're going to take 10 or 20% of those people and house them. And if we fail to do so, we give them money back, or we're not going to renew this or whatever, or we're going to try a different program. No, this is going to be cemented. A lot more millionaires are going to be minted from quote unquote servicing the homeless. The homeless population is going to be increasing. Even a casual observer would read headlines in the LA Times and see that they would actually spend $700 to $800K on on a single unit for a homeless shelter. Almost $1 million for a single homeless unit? That's so absurd. That's like almost nobody on earth lives in $1 million property, let alone like a homeless person. If you have 60,000, you need to scale this. You need big complexes. You probably not even California, or somewhere where land is super cheap. But these idiots, of course, they're going to be try to build things in Santa Monica, like spending the most amount of money in the most expensive spots on earth, and suing with a bunch of yimbys. And all this money is just going to be go to lawyers, or people who do this planning. Hardly anything is going to trickle down to the homeless. And at the end of the day, more and more people are going to leave LA, California. Already, I think 1% of the taxpayers in California pay 50% of all the state taxes. So this is another thing to drive successful people out. An ambitious effort to address homeless crisis in LA. Coalition of housing advocates, labor unions, progressive activists. Oh shit, that's nasty brew of people. Complete economic imbeciles. Plans to file paperwork on Tuesday for a ballot measure that would increase taxes on real estate transactions in the city to fund permanent housing for homeless people, and that these are risk of end up on the street. The organizers hope to collect 65,000 signatures by spring to place a tax proposal on the November 2020 ballot. 2022. The measure would levy a 4% tax on property sales above $5 million. It'll raise 5.5 on transactions above $10 million. The buyer seller would owe $200K on a $5 million sale, for example. And already, I mean, these obviously these journalists wouldn't know it, or they're just like painting this rosy picture. But as soon as you levy a tax, they count all the transactions that happened before this tax, and then they levy the tax, and we ended up not getting the money, because as soon as you put a tax, that discourages things. Obviously, a progressive have no problem understanding that if you want more and more people to quit smoking, they would keep raising the taxes on cigarettes. Now we're raising these transaction taxes or whatever. Oh well, it shouldn't have any effect. Of course it does. Quote, this is really about millionaires and billionaires paying their fair share to have a transformative approach to solving our housing crisis. Transformative? I don't know. I highly, highly doubt it. It's probably going to be going to the same homeless industrial complex to waste. I mean, did you hear about during the COVID, they want to have social distancing tents that they put out in public parks, and whoop-de-doo. When you add it all up, because they needed to build some bathrooms, they needed some security, it costed them $70,000 a tent. This is the type of shit that they're gonna buy, of course. Laura Raymond, director of the Alliance for the Economically Illiterate, Community Transit Los Angeles, ACT LA, and the leader of Ballot Measure Coalition. This affects folks who are very privileged, who have made money off increases in the property values. Inequity is one of the reasons why we're the situation we're in. Inequity is one of the reasons. So it's making sure that we're sort of looking for each other in protecting our neighbors. The coalition said the tax would have applied to about 3% of all the property sales in the city in March 2019 through March 2020, generating $800 million. Well, first of all, they're not going to get that much. They're not going to get that much. And on top of that, $800 million, I mean, if you listen to progressive YouTube channels like Jimmy Dore, homelessness would completely be eradicated if they would have spent $20 billion. Well, look, here's just an additional $1 billion tax that's probably not even going to fucking even make a dent. I would be surprised if they would publish the actual after this tax increase, which it's going to pass. These people are complete ignoramuses, and the voters too. And I just got to say that this would they wouldn't look at any kind of details. It'd just be like millionaires and billionaires would have to pay their quote unquote fair share. It's going to pass, and nothing's going to happen. I would have to say they would probably maybe like. All this money is going to be wasted. They're going to probably build like 30 to 40, 50 of new units. They're going to try to create a development. Now, the NIMBYs or whatever, the local people in these neighborhoods have so much power to veto anything. So once the government's going to start to even build even a modest, like a 20, 30 unit building, hey, they're going to get shut down. They're going to get sued into oblivion. There's going to be delays. There's going to be environmental impact studies. There's going to be an expert in shadows who would claim that the shadow is going to be cast on somebody's backyard and therefore stifling childhood development. So none of this shit's going to be built. All this money is going to get squandered, and LA is going to have more and more and more taxes, and heavier government, and less bang for your buck, really. What they really need to do is just fucking zero it all out. All the programs that they have, just cancel it and start from scratch, really. The proposed ballot initiative, United House LA, could benefit from a recent California Supreme Court ruling affirming that tax increases proposed by citizen initiatives need only a simple majority to vote to pass rather than two-thirds. This ruling was reaffirmed last year and allowed San Francisco to begin spending nearly $300 million a year in business tax to fight homelessness. Well, how did that work? Is homelessness fixed, or you have even more people enabled by shooting drugs and even more like maybe soup kitchens put in so people can have this miles and miles of Skid Row where they're shooting up drugs. They're in like hog heaven here because you need a carrot and stick, right? Yeah, there's no sticks at all. Like a homeless person could set up a tent almost anywhere. I mean, maybe not an intersection, but close to anywhere. And yeah, that's there. The police won't be able to throw their trash away. LA is basically turning into like a District 9, where they walled off the aliens. That's how bad it's getting. What's being proposed is known as the documentary transfer tax. The city of Los Angeles already has a similar tax that sends revenue to the general fund, though at a lower rate than is proposed for the ballot measure. Berkeley, Oakland, and Culver City impose a documentary transfer also fund services. By 51 to 41, voters said they would support tax increase to create permanent initiatives to help homeless individuals and reduce homeless population. By how? How many? Like 5, 2, 1, -3? I mean, there aren't going to be any solid metrics. And years after this passes, it's going to be embarrassing to see how little they made. Support increased 63% if a tax increase included a clear plan to ensure accountability and transparency. Well, no shit. Recent report from the California Housing Partnership found that about 500K low-income residents don't have access to affordable housing in LA. Well, that's because how does this have anything to do with anything? It's the laws. They have laws on the books that prevent people from building affordable housing. You'd have to be a complete moron, imbecile. You would lose money trying to build houses for the poor. That's why only luxury houses get built. But that's the fault of regulations. It's not. You don't need a tax to fix this. Oh, here's the beauty. LA County voters in 2016 provided Proposition, I remember this, HHH, a $1.2 billion bond measure to fund homelessness housing. In 2017, county voters passed Measure H, a 10-year quarter-cent sales tax increase to fund homeless services. In all these, here's $1.2 billion. And what has that gotten us? Politicians and voters have been frustrated by the slow opening of housing projects funded by the Proposition HHH. More than 7,000 units have been funded, but construction has been completed on about 1,000 of last month. Yeah. You have 60,000 homeless and growing. Not only that, a lot of those people, it's not even about the house. You can give them a free house. They'll be back on the street because they have mental issues. They have drug problems. The coalition backing the proposal ballot measure has some 24 members, including IBEW, Local 11, Inner City Law Center, LA Community, blah, 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 blah. Some of the groups backing the new ballot measure were key supporters of both earlier measures. Well, look, nobody learns a lesson here. And one of the major supporters of the early efforts, United Way of Greater Since LA, is helping craft this measure. Chris Hand, Executive Secretary of LA Orange County Build and Construction Trades Council, said it's essential that more affordable housing gets built in the city. It can't happen without more government funding. What funding? Just repeal the laws. Just repeal the environmental laws and repeal the people's power to veto large apartment buildings. Upgrade the zoning. Of course, that's very politically unpopular, so they're not going to do that. What they are going to do is, quote unquote, raise taxes on the millionaires and the billionaires. Some of the real estate industry were critical of the tax proposal. Quote, increasing more taxes on real estate transactions sends the wrong message, as it further increases the already high cost of housing in the region without addressing the core issue, obviously, that we are still in the housing production affordability crisis. Stan Smith, president of the Greater LA Realtors Association. Nothing this organization's support measure of H. The revenue from proposal tax would create more than 26,000 homes for the homeless people over the next decade and help about 475 residents stay in their homes each year. What does that mean? Are you going to pay their landlords? So that's you're going to inflate rent this way? About 70% of the proceeds would be spent on various forms of affordable housing. About a quarter of the total revenue would seek to fund projects through the sale of state and federal low-income housing tax credits, similar how proposal HHH works. About 1/3 could be spent on turning existing buildings into homeless housing through purchase, master leases, and renovation. Quote, the housing insecurity that we had pre-pandemic was severe, and coming out of the pandemic, whether they may be, it's going on to have even more severe. A coalition effort is not the only homeless-related initiative for LA that could make the Remember ballot. Mayoral candidate Councilman Joe Biscagno plans to collect signatures on a ballot measure that would prohibit people from sleeping or camping on sidewalks or other public spaces if they have turned down offers for shelter or emergency housing. Yeah, that's what we need. That's going to be a lot more effective. And how about we live in a civilized society and just prevent people from camping completely?